Hello friends, this is Grief speaking. Today we're going to be looking at Disney theme park incidents. I recently made an explanation video to the Amusement Park Incident iceberg. I was originally going to do a follow-up video to that, and then I ended up finding so many strange things going on in the world of Disney theme parks that I decided to make that the focus of the video. So to keep things somewhat organized, I've separated the video into 6 different categories. Ride or Die will cover incidents concerning guests being injured or killed on rides or in attractions. Costume Chaos. This will cover incidents concerning costumed characters, including everything from inappropriate behavior up to deaths. Guest on Guest Crimes. This will cover situations in which guests attacked or otherwise assaulted each other. Creepy People is sort of an extension of the last section, but with more of a focus on pervs and creeps. Parking Lot Problems. This will go over several strange happenings and accidents in the Disney parking lot. Hotel Havoc. This will cover incidents that occurred at Disney's on-site resorts and hotels. And finally, the weird stuff, which will focus on the strange incidents that didn't really fit into any other category. So yeah, we have a lot of stuff to cover. If you like my content and want to support it, consider checking out my Patreon. You'll get a shout out at the end of every video, and I'll send you a grief sticker. But as I said, we have a lot to get to, so let's quit messing around. So let's jump into the first category, Ride or Die. The Roger Rabbit Incident. One of the most brutal incidents of this kind was the Roger Rabbit ride tragedy that occurred in 2000. A 4-year-old boy, Brandon Zucker, fell out of the taxi cab ride and was then crushed underneath the taxi behind him. Brandon's father was actually sitting in this taxi watching the whole thing in horror. The ride operator heard the screams and stopped the ride. However, Brandon had been dragged nearly 10 feet under the cab. Despite employees telling them to stay back, Brandon's parents, along with several other park guests, jumped back over the barrier in order to try and help the boy. Unfortunately, they couldn't lift the car off of him, but the police and firemen arrived shortly after and lifted the cab using a jack. Remarkably, Brandon survived, although he was left with severe injuries and brain damage. Brandon spent the next 8 years struggling in and out of hospitals before finally dying in his mother's arms. Yeah, sorry for bringing down the mood right off the jump. Maybe let's move to a less tragic incident. In 1955, just after Disneyland's grand opening, the Retlaw 1, a special 2-car train on the Disneyland Railroad, derailed. Apparently, a brakeman prematurely activated a switch, causing the caboose of the train to veer off course and collide with a concrete slab. While no one was seriously injured, the derailment was not a good way to kick off the park. The mishap led to immediate design modifications and procedural changes. An interesting note on this is that apparently the brakeman who made the mistake, probably worried about getting in trouble for the disaster, snuck away from the scene and was never heard from again. In 1985, a fire broke out on the monorail at Disney, engulfing the rear car. This was before any onboard fire detection systems, emergency exits, and evacuation planning were in place, so the riders were forced to kick out the windows, climb out and around the outside of the train to get onto the roof, which just sounds like something from an action movie. The fire department rescued them, and surprisingly, no one was hurt. In 2009, however, another accident occurred on the monorail system that led to the death of Austin Wunenberg, a 21-year-old monorail pilot. The accident happened during a transfer operation involving Monorail Pink and Monorail Purple, which Austin was piloting. Monorail Pink was supposed to switch tracks from the Epcot line to the Magic Kingdom Express line. However, due to a chain of errors and miscommunications among the control panel operator and the supervisor, the necessary track switch wasn't activated. As a result, Monorail Pink moved in reverse on the Epcot line, colliding head-on with Monorail Purple. At the time of the collision, Monorail Purple had 6 passengers on board in addition to Austin. We don't know all the details, but we do know that Austin acted quickly, attempting to reverse the monorail in the few moments he had, clearly aiming to minimize the impact on his passengers. Even though Austin couldn't save himself, it does appear that his actions may have helped protect those on board, as none of the passengers sustained fatal injuries. Various systemic issues were identified as contributing to the tragedy, including the absence of the supervisor from the control room and distractions affecting the panel operator. Honestly, seems like a perfect storm of several little things like this that all compounded into an accident. Although the fact that the control room supervisor wasn't even there and slipped out to get food is ridiculous. Several safety measures were implemented in the aftermath. In 1982, a 20-year-old woman grabbed onto a Skyway cart and hung from it for 100 feet. Staff attempted to reach her from a nearby roof but failed. She eventually lost her grip and fell 15 feet to a roof, which she bounced off of and fell another 20 feet to the ground. Surprisingly, she didn't die but was left with a back injury. In 1994, a 30-year-old man jumped about 20 feet from a Skyway cabin, landing in a tree. Paramedics were able to assist him down from the tree, and he was treated for minor injuries. Of course, the dude tried to sue until he straight up admitted that he had jumped from the thing. And finally, in 1999, a 65-year-old custodian was cleaning the ride when staff started it up, not knowing he was there. He grabbed onto a passing cabin as it almost knocked him off of the platform. Eventually, he lost his grip and fell 40 feet, landing in the bushes near the Dumbo ride, dying on impact. Space Mountain has had a few incidents in its time. A lot of people have died either on the ride or directly after from natural causes, but two specific instances stood out to me. In one accident, an 18-year-old straight up fell off Space Mountain, falling 20 feet and injuring his back, leaving him paralyzed from the waist down. In 1998, a man had lost his ring finger when it had been ripped off after the man reached up during the ride. There was even a Reddit comment from someone who claimed he was working during the time and was part of the search party for the finger. I'm not sure I believe the Reddit guy, but it's interesting nonetheless. In the same year, a doctor was struck on the head during the ride and lost consciousness. Apparently, the injury caused him to suffer short-term memory loss and his left arm was paralyzed. I've seen conflicting stories as to what happened. The more likely explanation seems to be that he stood up during the ride and hit his head on something, but the other story is that something fell and hit him on the head. I'm not exactly sure which one is true. Big Thunder Mountain. In 2003, an accident occurred on the Big Thunder Mountain Railroad ride at Disneyland, resulting in the death of 22-year-old Marcelo Torres and minor injuries to 10 other riders. Essentially, a mechanical failure caused the ride's locomotive to uncouple from its first passenger car and become wedged beneath it. The major and sudden jolt injured the riders and unfortunately killed Marcelo by way of blunt force trauma to the head. Investigations revealed that poor maintenance and inadequate inspections were to blame. The really disturbing thing about this accident is that it took a while for the passengers to be rescued, and they were forced to sit next to Marcelo's dead body for a half an hour. The Haunted Mansion. In 1991, a 15-year-old girl was injured when she attempted to jump from cart to cart on the ride and got stuck in the track. Other riders said she was dragged for at least 50 feet before the ride was stopped. I don't know what she was thinking, and it must be horrifying as another passenger to watch this girl get scraped along the tracks, probably screaming in agony. In a less horrific situation in 2018, a former Disney World cast member broke into the Haunted Mansion and stole over $7,000 worth of props. He actually tried to sell the stolen items, and they busted him with photos and videos on his phone of all the stolen merchandise, including a photo where his friend was wearing an outfit he had stolen off of an animatronic. What a dumbass. A 70-year-old man was seriously injured while boarding Peter Pan's flight at the Magic Kingdom. While getting on the ride with his wife and granddaughter, he fell off the conveyor belt that aligns guests with small pirate ships, subsequently getting pinned by the next vehicle. Ride operators immediately halted the attraction and the man was airlifted to the hospital. The man actually ended up okay, and shout out to him. I mean, this poor grandpa's just trying to show his granddaughter a good time and he gets pinned between two carts. On two separate occasions, riders have reportedly lost fingers on the Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Disney parks. In a 2014 incident at Walt Disney World, a man lost the tips of his ring and pinky fingers on his right hand, and in the same year, a 12-year-old boy's fingers were lacerated, leading to a temporary closure and inspection of the ride. Both of these incidents had nothing to do with the ride malfunctioning, but rather the riders breaking the age-old rule of keep your hands and feet in the ride at all times. There was also an incident during a pirate stage show where an actor slipped on a puddle and smashed his head on a wall. The injury broke his neck and required 55 stitches on his head. Unfortunately, he died 4 days later due to complications. Pretty sad, and the disturbing part is that the crowd initially didn't realize this was an accident. They thought he had just done a staged fall, which prompted laughter and applause before it quickly became clear he was legitimately injured. Okay, let's move into our next category, costumed chaos, starting with the death of Pluto. Javier Cruz, a 38-year-old father of two and an 8-year Disney veteran, regularly played Pluto, Mickey's dog, in the daily afternoon parade. Well, unfortunately, Javier, while dressed as Pluto, actually died after being run over by the Beauty and the Beast float. Pretty horrifying, and what's crazy is a Disney World spokesperson said very few, if any, guests had seen the incident, which is kind of morbidly funny to me. He's not concerned at all by the guy who just died. He's more concerned about whether people saw it happen, you know, for the optics. I mean, that's just cold. There's actually been a slew of incidents involving costume characters in Disney's history. First, let's take a look at the Tigger situation. This was actually an entry in the Amusement Park Incident iceberg. I didn't cover it in my explanation video, but it fits in pretty well here. So in 2004, an actor portraying Tigger was arrested for fondling a 13-year-old and her mother during a photo shoot. However, he was acquitted of all charges once he made the case that it was simply an accident due to the limited field of vision the costume head has, as well as the oversized paw gloves, and he was actually back at work within a month. Then he got busted again after he apparently aggressively shoved 2 other cast members in front of park guests. And while this was under investigation, 2 female employees came forward saying he had fondled their breasts. His excuse was that he was simply looking at their lanyards. That's the oldest excuse in the book, dude. Their lanyards? I mean, come on. Needless to say, he was finally fired, but that's not where the Tigger trouble ended. In 2007, another Tigger actor punched a 14-year-old in the head during a photo op. His defense was that the kid was pulling on the back of the costume and was causing him to suffocate. Who knows what's exactly true on that one, but the idea of Tigger punching a kid in the head is bizarre. There was also a kind of crazy incident that happened in 2013 where a couple of teenage girls were messing with the White Rabbit from Alice in Wonderland by tugging on his tail. He catches wind of this and chases one of them down and grabs them fairly aggressively. Apparently he was pissed off and cussing at her, telling her to cut it out. You can tell the girl's trying to laugh and play it off, but it's clear she's a little freaked out. The crazy thing about this is that the same performer had an issue months before when he refused to hug several black kids. Yeah, that doesn't look good. In 2010, a woman claimed to have been aggressively groped by Donald Duck and subsequently sued Disney, saying she had since suffered from severe physical injury, emotional anguish, acute anxiety, headaches, nightmares, flashbacks, and other emotional and physical ailments. Imagine you're having flashbacks and nightmares about Donald Duck trying to grope you. That's terrifying. Now let's turn the tables a little here. There have also been several cases of cast members being the ones groped. In 2009, a 60-year-old man apparently felt up Minnie Mouse in Toontown. What? I don't even get that. What kind of sick old man is this? I mean, what's the sexual appeal of a cartoon mouse costume? Not that that would have made it more understandable, but you know what I mean. What's wrong with this guy? Another old creepo did the same thing to an actress playing Ariel during a meet and greet. This is why I have to give props to these performers. They have to deal with thousands of people all day who are going to try and mess with them in various ways, up to and including possibly molesting them. And of course, we should talk about the fact that there have been a lot of issues with the costumes themselves. In 2005, Walt Disney World reported 773 injuries to OSHA for employees portraying any of 270 different characters at the parks. These injuries were mostly related to the weight of the head portion of the costumes, as well as heat-related injuries. This is one of those, well, what do you expect kind of things. You got people running around in heavy furry costumes in the Florida heat. I mean, honestly, I don't know how they do it. Now let's move on to one of my personal favorite categories, guest on guest crime. Some of the worst incidents to happen at Disney World have nothing to do with the park, but what the guests do to each other. It seems like at least once a year we hear about some brawl breaking out at Disney, so let's take a look at some of the more egregious cases. In 2023, a family was preparing to take a photo in front of the 100 Years of Disney sign near the park's entrance when another family stood in front of them and blocked the photo. Well, I mean, that is just not cool. I mean, blocking a photo? That's completely unacceptable. The only remedy is physical justice, right? So yeah, over something so stupid, these families just start going at it right there in the most magical place on earth. I think the reason these stories always blow up at Disney in particular is because of the comical juxtaposition of it all. You know, it's this beautiful dreamland and people are beating the hell out of each other. It's just hard not to laugh at the irony. My favorite part of the video on this one is the camera guy just standing there and watching like, am I still gonna get paid for this? Or in 2019, a fight broke out in Toontown. Let me just say, that's a great sentence. This one's actually pretty brutal though. It seems like no one knows exactly what started this spat, but it's primarily between a brother and sister, although the whole family gets involved at different times. It really kicks off when the woman spits in the guy's face and then he just starts swinging on her. It continues to escalate from there, and even the grandma gets involved at one point. It looks like she tries to ram her scooter into the fight. One of the wildest parts of the fight is when the sister straight up says, "Hold my daughter," and pushes the stroller away. I mean, I've heard a lot of things before a fight. I've heard hold my glasses, hold my earrings, but I mean, this is a whole new level of trash when you say hold my baby. And I just want to take a moment here to talk about how all of these people are absolute garbage for having a fight in front of their kids and other people's kids. You can see several kids just standing there watching in the background, and even a mom moving her toddler out of sight so they don't have to witness it. The whole thing just makes me mad. While everyone is slightly responsible here for this fight, the real scumbag is the man who initiated the fight, because he's pretty tall and muscular and has no hesitation beating not just on his sister, but his girlfriend, at least I think that's who it is, after she hits his mom. I mean, this guy just seems completely unhinged, even exclaiming, "I'm ready to go to jail tonight." This is just an insane video, and you can find it in its entirety on YouTube. The man in the video ended up spending 6 months in jail, which seems a little light for viciously beating a woman in front of a crowd of kids, but you know, that's just me. Okay, the next category is creepy people. There was a pretty slimy incident in 2018 where a man fondled a boy on the test track ride who he was sitting next to. The article says that the boy has his mom seated on the other side, but it's unclear when she caught wind of what was happening. It's kind of scary to think that the man was just that bold to feel up a kid right in front of his mom, and the mom not really being able to do anything because, you know, they're strapped into the ride. It's pretty disgusting. In 2009, a 50-year-old man was charged with lewd and lascivious molestation after allegedly attempting to remove swimsuits from 5 teenage girls while all were in the wave pool at Typhoon Lagoon. Well, that just gives me the icks. Then, only a week later, a completely different guy who also happened to be 51 years old was charged with lewd and lascivious exhibition after he allegedly fondled himself in front of a teenage girl near the park's wave pool. A man saw what he did and confronted him, in which he fled, but eventually the security nabbed him. The man's defense of his behavior was that his European-style swimsuit was too small and that his junk slipped out. What? In another incident, the same month, a 29-year-old man molested a 13-year-old in the park. That's 3 incidents in 1 month. And in 2016, another incident happened when a 27-year-old man was caught on molestation charges, and this was after several reports of the guy groping people in the wave pool. What is up with the Typhoon Lagoon? This place is a hotspot for pervs, I guess. Okay, the next category is parking lot problems. In 1984, a single-engine plane attempted an emergency landing in the Epcot parking lot and crashed. The plane contained the Newells, a family of 5 who had rented the plane and was piloted by the father, Gary Newell. Gary, his wife, and their 1.5-year-old daughter died in the crash, and their other 2 children miraculously survived the crash, but in critical condition. Apparently, they crashed only 200 yards from the monorail, and that's kind of crazy because this could have been one of those huge tragedies if it just landed in one of the higher traffic areas of the park, potentially killing or injuring hundreds of people. This is one of those stories that makes me realize how little I know about piloting. I mean, even if you are a pilot, can you really just rent a plane and fly your family, including an infant, to Disney World? I mean, yeah, it was the 80s, but that just seems really bizarre. A couple years later, a man and woman's bodies were discovered floating in a retention pond after they drove their car down an embankment and into the water during a heavy rainstorm several days earlier. Authorities speculate that the 2 attempted and failed to escape from the vehicle through the driver's side window as it sank into the 6-foot deep water. In 2018, a man's body was found in a burning car in the parking lot of Fantasia Gardens Mini Golf. The man was identified as Brian Christ, a 50-year-old Walt Disney cast member. There's not a lot of information here other than the police have suspected no foul play and that Brian more than likely did this to himself because of his last Facebook post, which read, "Goodbye, cruel world. Goodbye." I mean, I hate to say it, but something about that post just sounds made up. It's so cliche. It's also a little strange that this was his method of doing it because, you know, how painful it is to burn alive. Also, why the parking lot outside of Disney? I don't know. I don't want to pick on a scab that's only going to bleed, but it's just a little weird. Okay, this is a strange one. Every year, Disney holds a 5K run called the Disney Wine and Dine Half Marathon. So in 2017, a runner collapsed during the end of the race in the Disney parking lot and died. Disney didn't release any information regarding the runner, only condolences to the family. All we know is that the race allows for ages 8 and up, so they were definitely over the age of 8. Then, strangely enough, the exact same thing happened in 2019 during the same event. Someone collapsed and died near the end of the race, and like last time, no information was given. This could be for several reasons. Maybe the family wanted privacy, or there's a potential lawsuit or something, but I do find it strange considering all the other accidents that happened at Disney World where we get a lot more information, and also that this happened twice in 2 years. I'm not trying to make a conspiracy out of this, but it's just a little odd. I'm also curious how common something like this is in a marathon. Maybe someone who's actually ran one could let us know in the comments. All right, the next category, Hotel Havoc. The Boardwalk Inn is one of the many hotels at Disney World, and as far as I can tell, it's the only one to have a hostage situation. In 2000, a 39-year-old man who was staying with his son at the Boardwalk Inn called room service at 2 a.m., and when the waiter got to the room, he took him hostage along with his own son. The man was slightly incoherent, but he was essentially demanding to speak to his wife, who he was currently in the middle of a divorce with. It's so wild to imagine you're working overnight at this hotel bringing someone chicken nuggies, and all of a sudden you're a hostage. The police evacuated the rest of the building and eventually managed to talk the guy down. Fortunately, he let the hostages go unharmed and turned himself in. I'm using unharmed loosely here because it's got to be pretty traumatic to have your own dad take you hostage at 4 years old. In 2020, a woman fell several stories to her death while staying at the Caribbean Beach Resort Hotel, and this wasn't the only fall on a Disney resort. In 1992, an off-duty employee was sitting on the ledge of the 15th floor at Disney's Contemporary Resort when a swarm of bees attacked him and he fell to his death death while trying to swat them away. I don't mean to make light of this, but that just sounds bananas. I mean, it seems like something you would actually see in a Disney cartoon. So alligators have been known to poke around Disney World. I mean, it's Florida after all, but the worst case in recent history was when an alligator snatched a small toddler by the head and pulled him away in front of his family and other guests. The attack didn't happen in the actual park, but near one of Disney's resorts, the Grand Floridian Resort and Spa. This resort actually has a beach, which is where 2-year-old Lane Graves was snatched while building a sandcastle. His father instantly dove into the water and even attempted to pry the gator's mouth open to free his son, unfortunately to no avail. The whole scenario is so horrific. I just can't imagine witnessing this, let alone being a family member who can do nothing about it. Since this happened, Disney's actually started an initiative to rid the area of alligators and have removed over 250 since the attack. All right, let's move on to the final category, the weird stuff. In August 1977, a tragic accident occurred at Disney's Magic Kingdom when a 4-year-old boy, Joel Good, drowned in the moat surrounding Cinderella Castle. He had climbed over a fence surrounding the 5-foot deep moat and fell in. This is one of those things that's just horrible. I mean, imagine you're on a trip to the most magical place on earth only to see the body of a small boy floating in the moat by Cinderella's castle. Maybe I should have called this category the sad stuff. Okay, this is a nutty one. In 1992, a 37-year-old man named Alan Ferris smuggled a sawn-off shotgun into Epcot, waited until after the park closed, and then took 2 security guards hostage after firing warning shots at them. Why did he do all this? An ex-girlfriend. Apparently, Ferris was in an 8-year relationship with a Disney World employee, and after the relationship ended, he went psycho and broke into the park as an attempt to see her. Well, luckily he never made it to the ex-girlfriend and was surrounded by cops. He let the hostages go, and when the cops told him to drop the gun, he said, "No, just shoot me, you're going to have to kill me." However, Ferris didn't wait for them to do it, and instead he used his own shotgun. The silver lining here is that no one, other than Ferris of course, was killed. This is one of those incidents that I was surprised I had just never heard about. I mean, someone breaks into Disney with a shotgun. It seems like something, you know, that would be out there, but I'd never heard of it. All right, let's end on a really weird one. The fact that it's a somewhat common practice for people to spread their loved ones' ashes inside of Disney World. Yeah, apparently it's a real issue according to Disney custodial staff. Some staff have said that the ashes are spread everywhere. In flower beds, on bushes, on Magic Kingdom lawns, outside the park gates, on some rides like the Pirates of the Caribbean, and the moat underneath the flying elephants of the Dumbo ride. I mean, I guess it's just a normal but secretive part of the job there. One guy said the Haunted Mansion probably has so many human ashes in it that it's not even funny. I mean, these people are really trying to make that place haunted, huh? Well, I can kind of understand the motivation, especially if someone requested this before dying, but at the end of the day, you're fulfilling that wish at the expense of other park guests who maybe don't want to breathe in your dead grandma, as well as the custodians who have to clean it up. Okay guys, that's it. I hope you found it interesting. I do plan on doing more amusement park incident style videos in the future, so if I missed anything, don't worry, I'm sure I'll cover it in the future. I want to give a big shout out to my patrons and channel members: Miriam Machado de Almeida, Naomi Romero, Soma, Krusty the Crab, One Group, Ali Morgan, Laz, Malediction, Hunter, Tora, and Heather M. You guys are awesome. If you want a shout out like that at the end of every video, as well as a handwritten note and a grief sticker, consider becoming a patron. I also finally got around to making a Discord server, so I'll put the invite link in the description below if you want to check it out. We've been having a pretty good time over there, discussing everything from video ideas to just cool stuff that we're watching and reading at the moment. So join in on the conversation over there. There will be some exclusive rooms for patron and channel members only as well, so yeah, check that out. But I think that's all I got for now. This is Grief speaking. Goodbye, friends.